All right, guys, welcome to another Finance Friday weekly wealth creation course. My name is Jerry Fetta, owner, founder, CEO of Wealth DynamX. If you're joining me today, this is either the first time you're seeing me or you've seen me before. If this is your first time, I apologize in advance. Things get a little bit crazy on these webinars, but it's all real. It's all finances, right? I'm not going to be some guy in a three-piece suit giving you fancy terminology to make you feel dumb so you feel like you need to hire me. This is going to be simple language broken down in concepts that are easy to understand, because that's how I am. That's how I grew up. That's how I was educated. And that's how 90% of America is. That's how the wealthy are as well. Okay. So as we're going through this, a couple of things that I want to get handled tonight. So first things first, I want to introduce a couple of people on my team. So we have Nano Aquino. Nano is one of my most seasoned employees. Awesome person on our team. He's worked with a ton of our clients. And so Nana will probably send you a message here on Zoom. We've also got Michael Kerrigan. Michael Kerrigan is, I think, my second oldest employee ever. Not by age, in tenure of working here. Mike started working with us in when was this, Mike? 2017, 2018. And so Mike has been around for a long time. Mike has come back. And so if you get a message from Mike, that's who that is. Their goal and their intention is going to be two things. Number one is, if you are not yet a client, a lot of the concepts that we talk about tonight in this webinar, they're from my book, okay? Blueprint of Financial Freedom, right? And I'm not here to say, hey, I know everything about finances and I'm some guru. I literally spent the last 10 years of my life studying the top 1%, not TikTok videos, not YouTube. I mean, reading John Rockefeller's biography, right? Reading JP Morgan's biography, reading about the Rothschilds, learning, how banks and corporations run their finances. And so I've done that for a decade. And so what I did is what they did. I just looked at what was it that they did to become wealthy. I'm going to copy them. And I spent a lot of time, basically in the trenches, blazing that trail, trying to figure out like, what are the methods and what works and what doesn't. And so when I figured it out, I became a millionaire at a very young age. I was earning millions of dollars. I still am. It's always gone up every year, but I took all of the stuff I did and I put it in this book, right? And so you have two options when you're trying to build wealth and you're trying to build it the way the wealthy have. You can do what I did, which took 10 years, or you can find the shortcut. This is the roadmap, right? Just read the book and follow it. So that's one of the things that Nano and Mike are going to connect with you on. If you're new, is to get you a copy of the book. You can grab that at jerryfetta.com/B2F. The second thing is to offer you a free appointment. This is whether you're a client or not. We want to connect with you. This is more than just, some video, some webinar. Like I said, I'm not some online guru. We actually want to have a relationship with you, right? I spent an hour this morning for free helping a guy, work out a 1031 exchange on a property with my lead tax planner that I have on retainer. And I just let him use the guy because we want to have a relationship. We want to help. We want to be able to, help somebody progress and become financially free. And that's what this is all about, right? So if you're here and you get a message, be sure to respond to them in the chat. If you're on social media and you get a message, same thing. If you're watching the replay later, don't think that the offer is not for you. If you message michael@wealthdynamics.com, you can get the free appointment still. So you're on YouTube, Facebook, doesn't matter, TikTok, whatever it is. Send michael@wealthdynamics.com of email. Just say, hey, free appointment in the subject, and Michael will get you set up with that. Okay. So without further ado, my ground rules. Good to see everyone tonight too. My ground rules. So number one, we are going to be learning about finances tonight. We're going to be talking about finances, right? So finances are a subject that whenever I bring it up with the average person, what I often hear is, man, that's so confusing. Finances have always been complicated. They've always been hard for me to understand. And there's two reasons for that, okay? It comes down to two things. I say this every week: math and vocabulary, arithmetic and being able to use a dictionary, right? And you don't even need to know an arithmetic. You just have to be able to use a smartphone. Can you use a calculator? If you can use a calculator, you can understand arithmetic and work out equations, and you can understand the math behind literally any financial instrument, investment, tax deal out there, right? The other one is the vocabulary. If you can look up words and use a dictionary or even investopedia.com, you can know about finances. It has never been easier to understand money, right? Like when I was reading about Andrew Carnegie, for example, at one point, wealthiest man in US history, one of my favorite people in the world, because he literally was one of the wealthiest guys in world history, died penniless. He gave every single penny away. except for like, I think like 100 grand, which he left to his daughter. Everything else he gave away. Like you'll see libraries and swimming pools and gyms and monuments, all from Andrew Carnegie. He donated all of this, right? But he was an immigrant from Ireland, right? He grew up literally dirt poor, like living conditions that none of us have to deal with in America. We complain about this stuff today. The guy literally grew up dirt poor. You know, he's a child, like elementary school age, having to go to work to bring in income so his family could feed his siblings. Think about this. No internet, no phone. This was in the late 1800s, guys. And somehow this guy learns about money. How? Books. He had to literally sift through books and learn all of this stuff. Like you can literally like Google it today. Anything you want to know, you can Google. So get rid of the idea that this is too hard to know. I can't learn about money. It's complicated. That's one of the barriers to learning anything, is being convinced that we can't know it. And here's what should piss you off a little bit, guys. The reason why finances seem complicated is because banks and Wall Street have figured out that that's how they get your business, right? If they can make it seem complex, if they can make it seem confusing, you then go into apathy, you reduce your responsibility on the subject, and you say, oh, I need to hire a professional. Well, who's a professional? Apparently the guys that are advertised as professionals, right? So on one side, they're advertising. You turn on CNBC, all you see is Edward Jones and Vanguard and Merrill Lynch and Morgan Stanley and all of this stuff, right? You watch football games. They've got New York Life Insurance on the basketball court. Why? Because they want you to know they're the professionals, so that when they confuse you and they give you a 32-page report to explain how a mutual fund works and your eyes glaze over and you're like, oh, I don't know what this means, you hire them. That's how they earn their fees. That's how they earn their commissions, right? So if you want to become wealthy, financially independent, not having to trade time for money, that's one of the things you have to decide. I can know about money, and I'm done giving control over to the blue bloods on Wall Street. I'm done giving control over to the banks. Right? It gets me fired up. It should get you fired up too. So that's the first thing. The second thing is getting rid of the idea that we know it all. Nobody knows everything, right? So I'm going to cover inflation. If you're watching, maybe you saw me on TikTok, YouTube, you probably saw everyone else talk about inflation too, right? So my gauge of knowledge is if I am not successfully winning in an area, I don't have knowledge in that area, right? So if, let's say with physical health, if I say I know something, but I'm out of shape, apparently I don't know it. Otherwise, I would be winning in that area. With finances, if I say I know something, but I'm not winning financially in that area, apparently I don't know it. So on the topic of inflation, if I say I know about inflation, but I'm currently not beating it, it's beating me, right? I'm complaining about gas prices. I'm complaining about groceries. I'm complaining about Joe Biden and whatever else. Apparently, I don't know something about inflation because I'm not winning with it. You see what I mean? So those are the two things you've got to remove is, okay, I need to get rid of, I can't know it or I know it all. Those are two things that immediately I can't learn after I've made those decisions. So I need to get rid of those decisions. I can learn. It's not too hard, right? It's something that is easy to learn, and there's more for me to learn. That needs to be the mindset. The third thing I want to cover, which I cover every week, is have a purpose for being here, right? Why are you here? As simple as that. Like, why are you here? Why are you watching? It's Friday night. It's 10 p.m. Quite frankly, it's kind of weird. You could be watching Netflix. You could be out having date night. You could be with your family. Instead, you're with me on Zoom. Like we're talking about inflation. Like we might as well be wearing tinfoil hats, right? And so what that means to me is that means that it matters enough that you were setting aside your time tonight on a Friday night to be here, right? So you guys know, like if you're newer to my content, we've been doing these courses. I've been doing these courses every single Friday for free for like the last 4.5 years. And the reason why I picked Friday night is because only the serious people are going to show up on a Friday night, right? The posers, the guys that are just trying to fit in, like the dilettantes, they're not going to come on a Friday night. They're out at the club. They're out, having date night. And there's nothing wrong with that. But for me, this weeds out, okay, these guys are serious. On a Friday night, this is a priority. So why are you here? Have that present. And then the next thing is, what are you going to do to apply the information? As you're learning this, you should always be thinking, okay, what am I going to do to apply this? Okay, this piece of information, how can I apply this? How does this work? How does it not work? That's an equally good question, right? So those are all of my prerequisites before we even talk about a subject, because we can't broach it if we're still in the land of all of those things I just mentioned. Okay, final thing is, drop your questions in the chat, right? Again, this is a relationship. It's communication. So you're here. I've got knowledge. I want to share it with you. I want to know what's going on in your life. How can I help? What questions do you have? What problems do you have? What barriers are you facing, right? Everyone here is here to learn. No one's going to criticize you for asking a question. So you can drop it in the chat. If you wish to remain anonymous, you've got that option too. Just send it to me directly. I won't say your name. I'll just go over your question. If you do want to chat, I'll go live with you. We'll actually mic up. We'll talk. It'll be just like the AM radio stations that our grandparents all used to listen to. Right now, we just call them podcasts, but same thing. And so we'll actually mic up and answer your questions, right? Same thing on Facebook. Drop your questions in the chat and we'll go over those. Okay. So Keith asks, how long is the blueprint book on back order? Good question. Mike, can you check on that for Keith, Mike or Nano? So if you want to get a copy of the book, go to jerryfetta.com/B2F. If Keith's book has taken a while to ship, Mike, make sure he gets a free ebook on one of our other books or a free 2 weeks on Wealth Dynamics U. But handle that with Keith and get that taken care of. Thank you, Mike. So we're talking inflation tonight. Right now with inflation, it's one of these boogeymen. And what I mean by that is it's like one of those topics that a lot of people, they talk about it, but they don't really know what it means. Right? You can group it in there with like the Dow, right? Or the economy. And it's this ambiguous, generalized thing. And most of it's just water cooler conversation. Okay. If you don't know what water cooler conversation is, back when people used to work at offices, you know, you would go to the water cooler and people would just shoot the shit. They would just talk about whatever, right? Sports, the economy, and it was to make small talk. And so inflation is one of those topics. Most people, they balk at it and they're freaked out by it. They don't actually know what it is. Okay. So to fight inflation, the first thing that we have to understand is, what is it? Okay. So inflation is an increase in the currency supply. Inflation happens when there are more dollars in supply than there are goods and services. Okay. So the dollars, the US dollars, the currency, if we go all the way back to 1971, prior to 1971, the dollar to some degree was backed by gold, meaning if you had dollars, there was actually a system of accountability on what that dollar was worth. And there could only be so many of them in existence at a certain time because it would dilute the amount of gold attached to each dollar. Okay. Even before that, before the 1950s, when we weren't even the Bretton Woods system yet, when it was just a gold backed dollar, like you would literally, the dollar was a deposit receipt saying that you had gold on account with the bank. So you could literally take your deposit receipt, you would go to the bank and you would get gold in return. And the reason why is it was inconvenient to carry gold around. That's how you get robbed. That's how, and not only that, it's heavy. Like it's not convenient to like lump gold around all over town. So you would take your gold, you would deposit it with a bank or a depository. They would give you a deposit receipt, and that receipt said it was redeemable for a certain amount of gold. That's literally how it worked, right? Now, with that system, there was direct accountability. Think about this. You only get a certificate if you first had gold. So they can't print a bunch of certificates because there had to have been gold on deposit. Do you see the accountability there? So the more dollars in existence, the weaker the purchasing power of that dollar because it's not directly backed by gold. That was the beauty of that system, right? Now, if we wanted to expand the currency supply, we had to either increase the price of the gold, the value of it, or we had to mine more of it. And that way there could be more gold on deposit, there could be more currency, right? So this was like a self-regulating system. Granted, it was less easily manipulated and it was harder to expand the currency pool, but that was the whole point, right? So then we slowly reduced the amount of gold required to be backed by a dollar until in 1971, it no longer was. The dollar is literally backed by zilch, right? Like if you want to get technical with it, the dollar is backed by the fact that you have to pay your taxes with it. That's it. If you don't pay your taxes, you go to jail, right? So the dollar like is something that can be created. As it gets created, what did I say inflation was? More dollars in existence than goods and services, right? So there's a ratio there, just like there used to be a ratio of dollars to gold, right? So when we have more dollars than goods and services, what happens? The goods and services, the units of those are smaller. They have to absorb the extra dollars, that the money has to go somewhere. So the pricing goes up. You have a higher price ratio on goods and services because there's more dollars in existence. So when we create currency, like we have in the last, 24, 36 months, and we've done it on a massive scale, this is more than we've ever done before, we're going to see inflation happen. Okay. Now, it's not the boogeyman. It literally is just that mathematical concept. It's ratios. It's basic division, right? So when we create more currency, it's no different than if I have coffee in my cup and I dump water in there and it's shots of espresso. The coffee gets more and more diluted until there's less and less coffee. It's more bitter, right? Same thing with purchasing power, right? So how does inflation get created? It gets created through the printing of money, and also through the borrowing of money. And when I say printing, I mean that as a euphemism or an idiom. It's digital, right? So like you're not actually seeing a printing press. The Federal Reserve Bank will just type digits in and that will create currency, and they can issue that to banks, and then banks can put that into circulation, or the US Treasury can issue a bond where they're borrowing currency from the Federal Reserve Bank and then put that into circulation. And wherever it goes is what's going to inflate first. So this is one of the keys. Do you guys remember in 2020 when they started doing all that stimulus bailout, right? We didn't see most of that. As individuals, we got what, $2,000? Was it 2,000 or 600? I don't even know. It was like a piddly amount of money. It's like $1,200 or something, right? It was like, you can't work, you're screwed. Here's $1,000. Like go buy some Rippy World tickets or scratch offs. Like good luck, right? So we didn't see that, most of us as individuals. Where did most of that money go? Most of that stimulus money went to corporations, right? So think about it. In 2020, we didn't see inflation yet. What did we see? The stock market skyrocketed. Why? Because that's where the hose was pointed, right? So wherever we send the currency is what's going to inflate first. Then it has to go through the ecosystem of filtering through. The corporations have it. They have it, as executive bonuses and stock buybacks and all these different things. Then it goes into the financial market, that inflates. People start making money there by selling, right? Anyone can make money when you're inflating the market like that. And so now that someone's sold as an individual, now the money is finally in the hands of the public. So do I see inflation yet? No, because I haven't done anything with that currency. So I've either saved it, right? And if I've saved it, that's deflationary. It's not going anywhere. I've kept it. It's not helping anybody. It's not, it's not transacting. If I spend it and enough of that happens at a high enough volume, then yes, it trickles into the economy, and the things it's being spent on, because that's now where the hose is pointed, are going to go up in price. And that's what we're seeing now, right? So I'm not going to go into the full mechanics. I've got another course on that. How do we fight it? Right. So the first thing I want to go over is, how do you not fight it? Right. So you don't fight inflation through unusual solutions. Right. And let me pitch it to you this way. Inflation has always been a thing forever. Like we've had it. Like if you look back at the last, from 1913 till now, right. You used to be able to buy a men's suit in 1913 for about $20. Today, that same suit costs about $2,000. Right. That was one gold eagle at that time. Right. One golden coin could buy a suit. Still same thing today. Right. So that's inflation. It's been at least since 1913. You can look back over 100-year track record. It's been there. Right. So what does that tell me as an investor? It tells me it's not a surprise. Right. It's not a surprise. It's been here for a while. We should not be shocked that there's inflation. Right. So this immediately for me gets rid of the hysteria. It's like everyone that's trying to get me all worked up about inflation. It's like, guys, it's been around for freaking 200 years. It's not new. It's the equivalent of if we all lived in a river and we floated down the river all of our lives. Our parents floated down the river. Our grandparents floated down the river. The grandparents before that, they floated down the river. And today somebody's trying to get me freaked out that there's a current. The current has always been there, right? Like it's not new. Inflation is not new. Now, here's the thing. Like me not planning for inflation is the equivalent of not knowing there's a current when that's what I'm sitting in. Like the river's been moving for my entire life and I'm just now realizing it. Okay, that's not an emergency. That's like a personal lack of awareness, right? So how do I fight inflation? The first thing is I have to be aware that it's always been around. And what does that also mean? Not only is it not new, it means that for that entire period, people have been successfully fighting inflation. Okay, we had it worse in the 80s. We've had it like there are periods of time that we had much higher inflation than we had now, right? If you're under the age of like 30, maybe 40 years old, you've just never seen it before. Okay, but you ask your mom and dad, they saw it. You ask your grandparents, they saw it. They were fine. Okay, they used to be able to buy a house for like $6,000. Right. So the fact that a house here in the US used to be, 300 and now it's 400 or 500. Yeah, that's big, but it's not the first time that's happened. Right. They used to be able to buy a car for $1,000. So the fact that a base model car used to be 30,000 and now it's 45. Yeah, that's a big jump. But, they used to do $1,000 for a brand new car. These are not new problems. right? And not only are they not new problems, but people successfully beat inflation before social media, before having a cell phone, before having all of the interconnectivity that we have throughout, not even the country, the globe. Like, it's so easy to make money right now. It's incredibly easy before having, cryptocurrency, before having all of these even investment tools that we're using to fight inflation, right? What were they doing? They would literally just work hard. Inflation, things got expensive. Dad would put in more hours, right? And I want to point this out because that is the first solution, right? So if inflation is more currency in supply than we have goods and services, wouldn't the basic way to be correct to correct it to be increase the amount of goods and services? Right? Like, if we have more currency and less goods and services, and that is inflation, let's increase the goods and services so it matches the currency, AKA go produce more. If we produce more, we balance it out. So we actually have a very high level of control on inflation because there's two ways to look at a ratio, right? We could look at it like this. Inflation is there's more currency in supply than there are goods and services. Or we could look at it from the standpoint of responsibility. I can't control how much currency is in supply. What can I control? I can control the amount of goods and services in existence. So I could then have the viewpoint that inflation is actually less goods and services in supply than there is currency. And it's my responsibility to increase the goods and services. Okay, this is a beautiful way of looking at it because it puts me in control, right? In a number of ways. So first thing first, if there is more currency in supply and I'm increasing the amount of goods and services, doesn't logic stand the reason that I'm going to be getting more of the currency then? Because I'm in control of, it's like if I'm listing properties, if I own more properties and more real estate, the more I'm listing, the more the market I control. So if I'm listing goods and services to attract this new currency, the more goods and services I list, the more currency I'm going to pull in. Okay, what is a good or a service, right? So products and services, a product literally is a producible good, like building a house, that's a product, the cell phone here is a product. This mug is a product. Like, I'm creating a thing that adds value to the lives of those around me, and they're willing to exchange currency to have that thing. So if I literally am in a business of creating or distributing products, I'm at the front mouth of that. I can literally increase it by increasing my output. Okay. What about services? Services are different than products. A service either rehabilitates a product that didn't work or was inefficient, makes it more efficient, or it speeds up the amount of use that the products that are out on the market can actually output, right? So you think about services, right? So services, they usually will assist. It's like ancillary, right? So when I get a service, like, that's another one that, in my opinion, is almost easier because you don't have to produce the thing. You just have to have the output and the energy. Right. So what would be like a difference here? A product, right? So I buy the book. That's a product, right? What would be a service? A service, I do coaching. That's a service, right? Like, I literally am putting time and effort into creating an experience that someone's going to take home with them or have a memory of, or whatever it would be. It's going to assist them in their life. So if I can increase either one of those or both, that then balances out the currency, right? And what does that simply mean? Literally work harder, put in more time, right? Create more services. If you're an employee, like, go do more hours. If you're a salesperson, go sell more things. If you're a business owner, get more of your product or service out in the marketplace, right? Like, not only is it easier because of technology, but there's more money available. That's what inflation means. There's more currency available. If you have the idea of, okay, inflation, it's killing me, good, go get some of the new money. Right? The only reason why it's not working for you is because the Fed created more money in their world and you didn't create more in yours. Right? So if you create more money in your world, you're now in the same boat as the Fed. You can go create as much money as you want to just by creating goods and services. Right? So that's the first point that I wanted to make is, okay, that's the first way we increase our output of goods and services, and then we get more income. Okay. And the way you can do that is you can literally just look at, okay, what's my year over year income? This is what I do. What is my year over year income? And is that rate greater than inflation? Right? So if inflation was 15%, they're saying it's 8, it's actually 15 or more. If it's 15%, right, did my income go up by 15%? And again, the trick is your mind is going to play on you. It's the victim mentality of, oh no, my income didn't go up 15%. It's the corporate evil people and the Wall Street fat cats that are holding us down. No. You can go work more. You control your output. It's not up to them. right? If you're a nurse, you can go put in overtime. If you're a salesperson, you can go sell more products and services. If you're a realtor, you can go find more buyers and more properties. You're responsible for that. Now, the problem is I might be lazy. I might want someone to blame. Anytime I blame, it's because I'm looking for a reason to be lazy. I want it to be their fault so I don't have to do the work. Okay, take that viewpoint or leave it, but for me, it works, right? So if I'm trying to increase my output, it's my responsibility. I can't have the attitude that, my wages are being held down or money is scarce. Apparently it's not. I think 40% of all dollars in existence were created in the last 36 months, right? So if I'm so inept that I can't get the dollars, that's my problem, not their problem, right? So all of those things like level the playing field on inflation. Now, the other thing that you want to do is you want to own things, right? There's more money than there are things, products and services. I want to own products and services, right? So when I get the currency, right, I don't want to keep the currency because it goes down in value. I don't want to put it in a bank. I don't want to put it in, under my mattress or in a CD or in a money market or any of those things. I want to trade the currency immediately for what's scarce. What's scarce? The goods and services. Those are the things that are scarce. So I want to produce them, and then I also want to own them, right? Like the idea of a monopoly. That's what I want you to think about, not the game, like the actual concept of monopoly, cornering a market. And inflation, I want to corner the market of goods and services by producing and manufacturing more goods and services. And then when I get the currency for the exchange on those goods and services that I produced, I want to use the currency to go buy more goods and services so that I produce them and I own them. Right? So that's how you win in inflation. Now, here's the thing, like there's so much content out there on inflation. I'm going to answer some questions here in a second. So feel free to drop chat comments, whatever you'd like to, as far as questions are concerned. But here's the thing is there's so much, I call it fear porn. Like there's so much fear porn out there on inflation. You go on TikTok, there's every single financial guru in the world trying to convince you to buy their course or their book or their insurance or their real estate syndication or whatever it is. And they're using inflation as the boogeyman, right? Like, it's like breathing. You've always had to breathe. Like if someone's like, oh man, what if you forget? You should buy my course so you never forget to breathe. Oh my God. Like you've never forgot to breathe. It's been your entire life. It's never happened. You don't need to fall into that. Right? So don't try and solve inflation with unusual solutions. What is like when we say, okay, we're trying to beat inflation, what are we actually saying? We're saying we don't like losing money. We don't like losing value. Because what does inflation translate to us? It's a reduction in purchasing power. So we're saying, okay, I had $100 last year, and that $100 now only buys like $85 worth of stuff. And we see that $15 loss, and we say, I don't like losing money. I need to figure out a way to fight inflation. And I'm telling you, you do that by earning more income, by producing more goods and services, because that's what there's a scarcity of. And then when you get the currency, exchanging that for more of those goods and services, right? Now, the reason, again, is because we're trying to avoid a loss. This is going to sting for some of you guys that lost money last week. There are people that have done some dumb ass stuff in the last 24 months trying to beat inflation. And guess what? They lost money. The very thing you were trying to avoid, you just did on a high level last week. If you did Bitcoin, if you did crypto, if you've been in stocks, all the stuff that I've told you not to do, stay out of those markets. Okay. The last 6 months, $1 trillion in crypto has just, they say it disappeared. It didn't, it got transferred. The market makers took it from you guys, from your Binance and your BitWallet and all the different things you use. Right. So if I'm saying I want to fight inflation, I want to protect my purchasing power, what I'm really saying is I don't want to lose money. Okay. It's an oxymoron to say I don't want to lose money, therefore I'm going to speculate and lose money. You lost more with that than you would have lost leaving in cash. That's the reality of the situation. Losing money does not make up losing money. So you do not beat inflation through speculation. That is dumb. Like that's how you lose money. And that's what inflation is. It's a loss, only it's now a more pronounced loss. Right? Like there's no benefit to a loss, guys. Like when you have dollars, like you can lose the dollars through inflation, right? The reduction of buying power. You can lose it through other things too. You can lose it through expense, like spending the money, right? But at least if I spend it, didn't I get something? At least if I lost it through inflation, didn't I at least get liquidity? Like there's an exchange back. Like I got something for the loss. If I give it away, that's another way to get rid of money. At least I get something. I get the goodwill and the feeling of helping someone. If I pay off debt, yeah, I'm out the money, but I got rid of the debt. When I lose money, I get nothing. There is no product. There is no service. There is no benefit. There's no gain that I get. It's just gone. And it's not even that it disappeared. It literally, in order for somebody to lose money in stocks or crypto, it's because another person took it. These guys sold at a profit. They skimmed the cream at the top, and it cost this guy his gains. That's not how you beat inflation, right? And this goes back to, okay, well, it's been around for hundreds of years. Never has the solution been to speculate. Never. Like, that's not, and no one has ever needed to, right? Those that got wealthy during inflation, do you know what they did? They bought goods and services. They bought, and I've got some questions on what that means. I'll answer those in a second, but they took the cash that they'd been stockpiling. When deflation happens, which is the opposite of inflation, there's more goods and services, there's less money. You want to have liquidity, right? So when times are tough, you've got money, you can loan it out. You actually have dry powder, right? In inflation, you want to have things, right? What are things? Real estate, gold, businesses. Like, those are real things. They're tangible items. They're not, you don't want to own digits and paper. You don't want to own figments of the imagination, right? So let me open this up for some questions really quick. If you guys are watching on Zoom here, drop your comments in the chat. We will go live and answer those. If you're on Facebook, drop your questions in the comments on Facebook as well, and we'll answer those here. Let's hit Facebook first. And again, guys, share the stream. If you're watching this, get this out there, share the stream. Because this is a message that should ignite you. Like, okay, I need to go earn more income. Okay, I need to start making better money decisions, right? Andrew, good to see you. Daniel Wrights is on. Good to see you, Dan. Steve, good to see you. Tyler, good to see you. All right, I don't see any questions on Facebook. Let's check out Zoom next. So again, if you're on Zoom, drop your questions in the chat and I will go live with you and we'll answer those. Good to see everybody. Mark says inflation is simply a hidden tax in plain sight. That's a good way to look at it, especially when you know where it comes from, like that whole mechanism. We have a question from Leroy. Let me bring Leroy on. I love that name, Leroy. There's a diner in Anchorage called Leroy's, one of my favorite diners. All right, we're live with Leroy. Let's see if we can mic up Leroy here. All right, we've got Leroy. How are you tonight, Leroy?
I'm doing good. How about yourself?
Hey, I'm doing good. I'm doing good. What is your question?
My question was, are we as a nation preparing to get rid of the dollar anytime soon or in the near future?
Yeah, good question. So the short answer to that is yes. You know, any nation, the currency like historically changes every like 40 to 60 years. So we technically, like when we left the gold standard, that was a change of currency, right? That was in the 1970s. So if we count that back, you know, from the 1970s to the 2000s, that's 30 years, 20 years past that. We're now 50 years in. We're kind of in the sweet spot for that to happen again. Now it's not going to be like, you know, everyone thinks it's going to be like ground zero and everyone's going to start over. It's going to be like when it does change, just like in 1971, most people aren't even going to notice, right? Like it's probably going to be, okay, we don't use paper anymore. We use digits like they use in China. It's not going to be like this, you know, earth shattering, dust on the ground type of apocalypse environment. So when it happens, right, it probably will literally be when you spend your dollars, they're going to give you your change back in digits, right? Or when you deposit in the bank, they're going to convert that over to digits, similar to what they did with gold way back in the day. So if it does convert over, I think that's what's going to happen. From a global scale, everyone owes everyone, right? All of the countries are in debt to each other. So there's not like no one really has the upper hand in that sense. I think there is a loss of confidence, you know, in the dollar on a international scale as far as being the world's reserve currency. But the problem is okay, well, if we get off that system, we've gone to war with every single country that did, right? So who knows what happens with that? Like it's a game of coercion and violence at that point. Whoever's got the bigger tanks wins. And again, like the countries that are opting out, they are actually starting to use gold. Like some countries are settling in gold. So I wouldn't stay in the dollar. And here's my viewpoint on this, Leroy. I don't care what the currency is, because that all that is that's what I earn in, and that's what I pay my bills and taxes in. Like that literally is the only thing I do in currency. If it's wampum, if it's Bitcoin, if it's dollars, I don't really care. Like I'll earn whatever it is. I'm always going to convert it from that currency into things like gold and life insurance and real estate. And those are going to be, they're valuable regardless of the currency that they're denominated in, right? That's going to be always a valuable thing. So I want to have those stores of value, but I'm never going to save in the currency, right? Like we know every currency ever has gone to zero, right? It's kind of like saying, okay, well, like the stock market, if every stock ever in history at some point went to zero, nobody would bet on the stock market. You'd be like, at the end of the day, it's going to go to zero, right? So the game is, okay, well, just don't save in the currency. Don't invest in the currency. Okay. You can trade it, you can earn it, you can do what you want with it, but then immediately put it into those stores of value. Leroy says he's noticed Bitcoin at some 7-Eleven stores. To that, Leroy, I have to say that I have also noticed some sushi at some 7-Eleven stores. And just like the sushi, don't do the Bitcoin. Gas station sushi and gas station Bitcoin are probably never going to end well. All right, good question here from Avery. Let me bring Avery on. All right, we've got Avery tonight. How are you tonight, Avery?
Hey, being phenomenal, Jerry. How about yourself?
Good. Thanks for asking. What is your question?
Yeah, my question is around, so you mentioned that number one, we want to increase our production. Number two, we want to be able to revert back to owning those goods and services. So is this referring to being able to store in, is this the capacity to go back into stores of value like you've been educating us on, or are the top 1% reinvesting back into their businesses to actually increase their production, or is there something else that we're missing in terms of actually going back to owning those goods and services?
Yeah, good question. And you kind of hit it on the head. So the main ones are going to be, real stores of value, right? And I posted several months back on like bartering, way back, like ancient Babylon days. Gold was a function of like wanting to store value long term, right? So if I am investing, in trading my currency for like commodities, that would be like an example of like a product or service. I could do wheat, dairy, oil, whatever it is. Ultimately, it comes down to like which one's going to last the longest for the period of time I need it for. Is it transferable? Is it easy for me to own and hold? So that's why I like gold for that. But you did make a good point, right? So the production of a service would be a business or a skill set. So you could also then in an inflationary environment, take the currency you're earning and invest that either in your business or your skill sets to increase your ability to produce. Right. And so that goes back to, okay, well, when do I reinvest in myself? An inflationary environment is a perfect time to do that. You're your most stable asset. Right? Like you're not going to be lopped in half like Bitcoin did last week, right? If you invest in yourself, for me, whenever I've invested in myself, whether it was, sales, marketing, communication, understanding my mind, understanding others, it always has paid off. And that's been a great deal. And so that's a good place during inflation. And then of course, hiring, investing in your business, if you have one as well, that's another good play. But those are all, either they literally are tangible goods and services, or they're mechanisms that can produce more goods and services. Good question there. Okay, a couple more questions here. We've got more of a comment from Crystal. So Crystal says we need Wealth Dynamics info translated into Spanish. We literally just had this conversation with one of my staff members today, Crystal. So that might be on the way. So we'll keep you posted. Okay, let's see. Roy says, I think they are trying to switch from a paper dollar to a digital dollar. I think you're right. I think that just gives them more control. Great question from Kathleen. Let me bring Kathleen on. All right, we should be live here with Kathleen. Oop, I think I just muted her on accident. Go ahead and unmute again, Kathleen.
You there?
All right, I am here. How are you tonight?
I'm good. I'm good.
Awesome. What is your question?
Well, I believe that real estate has always been a good, let's say it's a goods, but I don't want to be involved in actually running real estate. I don't want to do that anymore. So is there a way of getting passive income from real estate?
Yes, that's a good question. And I have the same exact mindset. I love the idea of real estate. I do not love the idea of dealing with property managers and tenants and all of the nitty gritty stuff that goes with being a property owner. If you're a landlord, right? Even with my own life, I rent my house right now. I don't want to deal with mowing the lawn and fixing appliances. So I'm getting passive income from real estate. There's two ways that I like to do that. If you reach out to Nano Aquino here in the chat, he can give you more info. Michael can as well. The first one is going to be secured private lending, right? So this means that I'm going to lend money to a fund that invests in real estate, and I'm literally going to be the bank. They're going to pay me interest income. And so with that, like they pick out the properties, they do all the heavy lifting, and then they just pay me for the use of my money, right? Same thing you do with the bank now. You deposit money in the bank, they pay you what, 0.10%. So instead, you can be earning 8, 10, 12, 14% on private lending. And so that gives me the passive income backed by real estate without any of the, I call it PETA factor, pain in the ass with the real estate management. The other one is seller financing. So seller financing is a great way to be more involved. I buy the house and then I have a family that moves in, they make a down payment and then they pay their mortgage payment to me over, 20 or 30 years. With that, I do want to have property management. I want to have a trustee service running the entire thing so that it can be outsourced. Both of those are things we can help with. So Nano, if you want to connect with Kathleen and give her some information on those two options, but that's a good way to be passive without having to be involved, but you still can have the benefits of real estate and the passive income. Let's see. Mark has a question. Let me bring Mark on live here. We have two Mark Perrys. Which one is the real one? I think we've got Mark. Mark, can you hear me?
I can hear you, Jerry. How are you?
I'm good. How are you tonight?
I'm great, great. I always have problem understanding on a sacred account when I'm getting 4% guaranteed interest and a 2% dividend. I have a hard time understanding how that is either keeping up with inflation or beating it.
Yeah, that's a good question. And one thing, and I know that you've got your account set up differently, but those are gross. And I always like to make sure my clients understand this. The 4% guaranteed and the 2% dividend, like if you're with Mass Mutual, for example, that's a gross rate. Your net rate is closer to like a 3 to 5% compounding annual growth rate. So it's not 4 or 6, it's more like 3 to 5. And even more to your point, it's like, okay, well then how is that beating inflation? Right? So the number one purpose of a life insurance policy is to not lose money. Right? So that's the first thing, is I guarantee it against loss. Right? Inflation already is loss. I don't want more loss on top of loss. The second thing is it's guaranteed growth, right? So I know for sure what I'm going to get. I know I'm going to get a 3 to 5% compounding annual growth rate. It's also guaranteed against taxation, right? It's guaranteed against market volatility. Like there's a lot of protection around it. So I think of it like, okay, well, if I had a car, right, and I was trying to park my car somewhere where I knew it wasn't going to get lost, I would park it in the most safe place I could park it, right? And so that's what the sacred account is, the sacred account being the life insurance policy. It is going to give you a dent in inflation, right? But if you just put everything in life insurance and never do anything other than that, if inflation's 15, you are still losing like 12, right? And so the key here is the arbitrage, borrowing against the life insurance and then doing the investing with it so that you're earning the 3 to 5 and also the other rates of return on top of that. So for me, I will borrow against my life insurance and I'll invest in my business. I'll invest in private lending. I'll invest in seller financing properties. And so the combined rate of return there, like I'd explained earlier, it's because life insurance is a form of a cash holding. So if there's already a surplus of currency, I don't want to leave it in the life insurance. That's already going to, there's a surplus. The lack is the goods and services. So I want to access by borrowing against the life insurance and then use that to then go, excuse me, microphone, and then use that to go borrow to go buy the goods and services already over here that are already in scarcity. Right. So You did make a good observation. If you leave it there, you're not beating inflation at all, right? Is it better than putting it in a bank? Definitely. Is it better than a money market? Definitely. Now, the other thing too is, and this is my philosophy on it, I don't put everything I have in my life insurance, right? I do other assets. So my life insurance, I keep 6 months worth of expenses there as my tier one reserves. Any line of credits that I have, like if I have a gold line of credit or a home equity line of credit or just a line of credit, I keep 10% of the credit line value, like the percentage in reserves. I keep that in my life insurance as well. All of my self-financing, I do that through my life insurance because it's my, cars and furniture and business deals and personal development. And then beyond that, I do gold and I do real estate, right? So the gold is going to have a potentially higher return. The real estate is going to have a potentially higher return. But on all three of those, I call that my tier one, tier two, and tier three: life insurance, gold, real estate. On all three of those, I'm borrowing against them, earning the rate of return on the actual borrowed against the collateralized asset, and then also usually doing seller financing or private lending on top to double dip and get that return. And that beats inflation. And then for me, really, it is, earning more, right? And that's going to be the key. My active income is where I want to beat inflation. My passive income keeps me from ever being poor again, right? It keeps me from ever having to trade time for money again. But if I want to increase and beat inflation, I'm going to use my active income for that because there's no risk involved. And I love that Mark asked that question because it brought up 2 points with the sacred account. A lot of people pitch that you're getting a 4%, guarantee and a 2% dividend. You're not actually netting that. Your net internal rate of return is 3 to 5%. And so it's important for people to really know that. Otherwise, what happens is you have different expectations than what you thought, and then you kind of get the buyer's remorse on the back end. All right, let's see what other questions we have. Super good questions tonight. I see one more over here. Good question from Jonathan. Let me see if we can bring Jonathan on live for his question. Hey, Jonathan, how are you tonight?
Hey, I'm doing well, man. How's it going?
Going good. What is your question?
What is your question?
Yeah, I was curious about. I watch a lot of you. I watch a lot of Grant Cardone. I watch a lot of Rob Kiyosaki, and I was learning a little bit about how inflation will drastically increase when the American dollar is no longer traded or accepted outside of America. I was wondering, is that something that you think something that could happen soon, possibly, maybe in this lifetime, or is that just something that's like way down the road?
Yeah, so it's hard to say when that happens because it kind of gets into like geopolitical stuff, right? And as I mentioned earlier, so the dollar currently is the world reserve currency. We have our finger in a lot of different countries, like even, for example, with Ukraine, whether you think it's right or wrong or whatever, we're intervening. We've done that with, Iraq. We've done that with Afghanistan. We did that with, Gaddafi, all this different stuff. So we get involved almost every time. We have like countries that owe us money. We owe countries money. And it's kind of like, like if you went to a bank and you took out $1 billion in real estate loans, like they really care what happens to you, right? Whether they agree with you or not, whether they like you or not, they're financially vested in your future at that point. So they don't want you to default. We owe so much money. We're the number 1 debtor nation in the history of the world. We owe so much money to so many people that it's kind of like that. Even if they hate us, for them to put America down, they're going to lose out massively financially, right? And so then it's like, okay, well, what is the benefit of that? So ultimately, I think countries are losing confidence. I think that it's going to be either a long and arduous road to disconnect the dollar from all of these international countries. That's option A, or it's going to be a short, violent road, right? And I would prefer the first to the second. But you are correct. If that did happen, then the only people that cared about dollars would be us. And then it would be an inflationary environment, just like you see in Venezuela and these other countries where no one else cares about their currency. It all stays inside. And so then it's, again, there's more currency. And the way you fix that is imports and exports, right? If there's a bunch of currency in the United States, then our GDP needs to go up massively. We need to be producing a lot more and also exporting a lot more so that we have, the goods and services, imports and exports coming in and coming out, flowing in, and that surplus of goods then balances out all the extra currency. But the best way to defend against that is to own real things, own, gold, silver, commodities, businesses, invest in yourself. Okay, good. I think that's all the questions I see on Zoom. Let me see if there's any other ones on Facebook before we jump into the last little bit here. So we have a question. Can you talk about leveraging debt in relationship to inflation? So that's a great question. So basically so the idea is during inflation, people say borrow money, right? And the reason they say borrow money is for a few reasons. In an inflationary environment, typically interest rates are very low. Again, there's lots of currency out there. That's part of what created the inflation. So it's easier to get loans. And so the idea is if I borrow money, when inflation happens, right, I'm paying the bank back with devalued dollars. In my head, that works. On paper, that does not work, right? And what I mean by that is if, okay, let's say I borrow $1 million and I pay the bank, 10 grand a month for that $1 million now, right? And that's whatever, I just made the numbers up. It doesn't matter that the 10 grand a month is worth less. Like I still have to pay it to them, right? So it kind of goes back to, okay, well, do I have means to do that? Did I increase my income? So I'm not a proponent of lever up because of inflation, because the inflation is going to, dilute the debt and you'll pay them back with less. And, the assets are going to go up. Maybe that will work. Maybe it won't, right? There are people that have done that successfully, but the other thing that they've done successfully is they've increased their incomes, their active incomes. They've increased their savings rates. They've also increased their financial literacy. They understand the tax code. They typically have accounting teams. Like there's so much other context. It's kind of like saying like professional bodybuilders take steroids. Therefore, if you're a bodybuilder, you should take steroids. Well, no, maybe you shouldn't because you're not 300 pounds trying to win Mr. Olympia, right? Like if I'm the average guy and I hear, okay, well, the wealthy, they use debt during inflation. And I don't know all of the other context surrounding that and all of the other responsibility that comes with that. For every guy that I can show you that did that, I can show you one that also went bust, right? And it wasn't always their fault. The bank, the inflation stops. We now go into deflation. Currency dries up. Banks call loans. And they say, hey, you have 90 days to pay your loans off. Where am I going to get the money to do that, right? So as a general rule, whenever I hear that, those are the kind of buzz things you hear on YouTube and TikTok and Instagram. Whenever I hear that, I always ask myself, well, what's the rest of the story? Could that be a good idea? Sure, it could under the right circumstances, but does it make sense now? Does it make sense for me? Right. And do I have all the knowledge that I need to have in order to actually execute it on the back end? Really good question though. Okay, I think that's all the questions on Facebook. So the last little bit that I want to hit on this, guys, is again, like, so we talked about earnings with inflation. We talked about increasing our production, buying more tangible items. And then the other thing too is to realize like inflation goes through lows, right? So if we focus on inflation, what comes after inflation? Usually deflation, right? And so if we don't think about, it's like a yin yang, if we don't think about both sides of the coin, then we get caught up in one. And when the other happens, we're at effect again, right? It can't be like, inflation happens and I'm scrambling and freaking out, trying to handle the inflation. And then it flips and now it's deflation, which I wasn't prepared for again. And now I'm freaking out and scrambling to handle deflation. Like you have to realize, and it's again, simplify it. Inflation, more currency than goods and services, right? Deflation, more goods and services than there is currency, right? So in deflation, what do I need? If I have goods and services, like I need to also have liquidity. I need to have cash. So this is not a polarized thing of, okay, never have cash, because what about in deflation when the currency is the thing that is in lack, right? So the answer to all of this, how to win in both environments, earn as much money as you can. Okay. And I mean, as much as you possibly can, invest in yourself, grow your income. Like that's something you should be proud of. That's something I want to help you do. I want to see you guys all doing that. Save 40% of your income at all times. Okay. Take that saving, put that in real stores of value and invest for passive income. And as long as you do that, you're always going to have income. You're always going to have cash and liquidity. You're always going to have real assets, and you're always going to have passive income as well. And you're going to be inflation proof, deflation proof. It doesn't matter. Right. So, guys, I hope that this has been helpful. I hope that this has encouraged some people on the topic of inflation and put you at cause, like you're actually able to do something about it. And then I hope it's given you some strategies. And then really, I hope it's busted some myths, like some of the nonsense and the bullshit out there. I hope that we've been able to confront that some of that stuff is just marketing, is just stuff that sounds good on a 15-second video on TikTok. It doesn't work in real life. Secondary is if you want to learn more, there is more to learn. So again, grab my book, Go to jerryfetta.com/B2F. You can get a copy of this. If you want to set up a free call, again, reach out to Nano, reach out to Michael. If you're watching the replay, you can go email at michael@wealthdynamics.com, and you can get a free coaching call with our team. Otherwise, I think that is all we have for tonight. I hope everyone has a terrific weekend. If you're in Colorado and it's snowing today, stay warm. I'm not jealous of you at all. My door actually just blew open from the wind there. Have a great night, guys. I'll see you guys next time.